Okay, so I'm going to create a very short video around understanding the objectives of a file manager, right? So, and a file manager in an operating system is a critical component because we want to be able to do various things, right? And essentially the objectives need to be able to take some kind of information, store it in some capacity on the operating system, make sure it stays there for a long time, and be able to guarantee that it's not being deleted or removed, and guarantee the access privileges for this information. So if we were to think about those objectives, we would say that, well, we need to be able to store it, store information on secondary storage, right? So on some kind of storage where it's not going to be removed, yeah? Okay, we want to make sure that we have this capacity to share information. Share info for different users. Right, so I mean, if I have a file, I need to be able to change the permissions to allow other people to see that file. Right, that's a critical thing, yeah. I need to be able to provide some kind of I/O support, yeah. So whether this is actually a support for different storage devices or support for different users, I need to make sure that that kind of input-output support is there, yeah. We want to make sure, yeah, or at least minimize the risk, yeah, or the possibility of the data being destroyed. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's not going to be destroyed. So these are the kind of high-level objectives of the file manager on any kind of operating system. Yeah. So we should be able to allow users to be able to create, I suppose, files. So to create, read, update, manipulate the control sequence of the files, and to do, I suppose, various tasks with it. But I guess when we consider what a file is, first of all, right? So if we were to say that a file, right, needs to be able to be created by some user, right? And then this user is able to say who is actually going to have access to this file. But if we think about that file, we can say that a file can be some data, that is regarded as a single entity. Okay, as some kind of single entity, yeah. It's going to have some kind of size, right? And these can vary greatly. So it has to be variable. Now, and it has to be stored somewhere, right? So we get to the storage of this now in a second, but it has to be stored somewhere, right? But it also has what we would call attributes, yeah? And the type of attributes that we need for a file, well, it has to have a name, right? This has to be unique, okay? It has to have information around access. When was it created? When was it last read? When was it last modified? Some kind of, I suppose, access controls or protection. Right, so we want to be able to limit other users. So whether that's limiting other users based off of, well, are you allowed to read it? Are you allowed to see it? Are you allowed to modify it? And it has other stuff like the type, so what the file type is, what the size is going to be, and then its location. Right, and obviously the location is critical, right? So we need to be able to look at this, all of these various components, right? But if we think about it, right, at a very high level, right? So we want to be able to have information being stored on the system somewhere. This information is going to have to be managed by the file manager. The file manager handles how we store information on the disk. We're going to have to be able to then put it into some secondary storage, right? And the secondary storage is very important because we want to be able to make sure that it's long-term storage. Right, we want to be able to share the information between different users, so this is very important. And when we look at share, well then we have to have some kind of metrics then. If we consider it, well, if we want to share this information, well, we need to have stuff like who owns the file, when was it created, when was the last access, and how do we restrict that access to it, right? We want to obviously make sure that the information can't be destroyed. So these are the various attributes that we would typically associate with a file on a disk, right? Where a file is simply just a piece of information that's stored together. Okay, so where's this stored, right? So we have all of this information, right? So we know that has to go onto the disk, so I'm just going to rub a little bit of this out. Okay, so we understand that we create this file, and then the file has to be stored in some kind of secondary storage, right? And that's cool, right? So, and the secondary storage has a certain format, and it has a certain, I suppose, well, limitation and structure, but okay, nearly there. So we understand then, as an end user, what we can do is we can create this file, and then the file manager has to take this file, has to put it somewhere, right? But we know from our, I suppose, our high level discussion briefly before, that a storage device, so the secondary storage, consists of what we would call platters, right? And a platter simply looks like this, right? So let's draw it out. Okay, so a platter would be like this type of structure, okay? And then actually each platter consists of a number of tracks. So if we were to draw again a little bit closer, we'll label this now in a moment. And then each actual track then consists of a number of sectors or blocks, right? And this is where our file is actually stored. So what happens is it looks like this, right? So let's annotate this just a little bit, yeah? So what this is actually called, yeah, is that this would be known as a platter. And the secondary storage, yeah, consists of a number of platters, right? And then each platter then consists of a number of tracks, and then each track has a number of sectors. So the key thing for the operating system is, well, how do we actually store this information on these sectors, on these tracks, on these platters in an efficient way, right? And there are many different approaches to looking at this. Okay, so I mean, this should have given you a kind of a high level understanding of the objectives. So just to reiterate, so we know that the file manager needs to be able to store and maintain information on the secondary storage. The secondary storage looks like this, where we have this idea of, we have a number of platters in the secondary storage. On the platters we have different tracks, and on the tracks we have sectors. So then the files are stored then in the sectors, and we need to be able to put these on those tracks, on those platters in an efficient way to be able to get access to that information back in a reasonable amount of time, right? We know that the file manager needs to be able to allow us to share this file with other people, right? So we need to have some kind of coded mechanism to be able to identify who can actually get hold of this particular file. We need to make sure that we can't lose any of this information. Okay, so I mean, we should now know the very high level file manager objectives, or the objectives of the file manager. We need to understand what a file is. We know a file is just simply a collection of data that is regarded as by users as a single entity. We store this, it has a unique name, has a date of creation, when it was last read, when it was last modified. It has some kind of access control, so for protection and authorization. It has a size, the file type, and a location on the disk. And the disk is simply a collection of platters, each platter having a collection of tracks. Each of the tracks is broken up into different sectors. And the goal of the file manager is to be able to do this seamless, I suppose, storage and maintenance without interfering with, I suppose, any loss of data. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Thanks.